My full name is Rebecca Smith. I'm 32 years old, and I married my husband Michael about 3 years ago in the spring. Our relationship is great, and we are also very close to his sister Emily. We get along like sisters. This story involves a man named Daniel, who later married Emily. Michael and I have been together for over 10 years, even before we got married, so we are like parents to Emily. We always wished for her happiness and took care of her. Because of this, when Emily got a marriage proposal from her fiancé, she wanted to introduce him to us, her second parents. "I want to introduce my fiancé to you both," she told us. That moment was very special for us as a couple. We felt so happy because Emily, whom we love like a daughter, was finding her partner and working towards a happy future. It was a joyful moment for both me and Michael, and our hearts were full of happiness. Finally, the day came. Emily brought Daniel, her chosen partner, to meet us. Daniel seemed to be around my age, maybe 32. He was 5 years older than Emily, which made me realize she likes older men. I watched him quietly and was impressed by his solid appearance and calm attitude. However, I noticed Daniel kept glancing at me. Did he want to say something to me? Was there something about me that bothered him, or was it just a coincidence? These questions popped into my mind. I quickly checked my clothes and hairstyle for any issues but found nothing wrong. Maybe realizing it was rude to stare, Daniel quickly looked away. In the end, we couldn't understand why he was watching me so closely, but Michael and I decided not to worry about it. We went on to introduce ourselves and started chatting with Emily and Daniel, who were sitting across the table from us. "Please take good care of my younger sister," was a classic phrase exchanged, and Michael responded with a smile, "Emily, I'm trusting you to him." Saying this, he entrusted Emily's future happiness to Daniel. This created a warm and friendly atmosphere at the gathering, easing the initial tension of our first meeting. At one point, Michael asked Daniel a question he was curious about. "Daniel, may I ask where you work?" I was very interested in his answer and listened carefully. Daniel answered proudly, puffing out his chest, "You might have heard of it. I work at T Company, which is growing very rapidly right now." T Company, is that the famous game development company? Yes, that's correct. I actually started working at T Company last year, but I didn't leave my old job because I didn't like it. T Company approached me directly because they valued my skills highly, so it's like a promotion for me. Don't worry, I didn't start as a regular employee. Hearing this surprising story, both Michael and I were amazed. I couldn't help but widen my eyes, and our gazes met. Seeing our shocked reactions, Daniel seemed satisfied that he had made an impression, and he spoke with even more pride. "That's why I want you to trust me completely with Emily. I'm climbing the career ladder quickly at T Company, and I'm confident that I'm progressing faster than most. Even though I started at a regular level, my salary will increase rapidly, and I'll move up in the company quickly, so please don't worry." When I heard what Daniel said, I was so surprised that I couldn't speak. T Company is super famous, and I know a lot about it. Michael probably knows about it too, but since he doesn't work there, he might not know all the details. I think both Emily and Michael know that T Company is really well known in the industry, but it seemed like neither of them expected Emily's fiancé Daniel to move up the ranks so quickly after joining. I didn't expect it either. Some parts of Daniel's story made me feel a bit uneasy, but I decided to believe him since he talked about being recruited by T Company and climbing the career ladder really fast. As we talked about other things, I was curious to know how they met and got together. They said they met through a friend they both knew. Daniel was looking for someone special but didn't want to go to matchmaking events, so he met Emily through a friend he trusted. Emily wasn't actively looking for a boyfriend, but she decided to meet Daniel when her friend suggested it. I really like how Daniel always makes me smile. His clumsiness is kind of cute too, Emily shared. Hearing them talk about their feelings was like hearing something really sweet, even though we weren't eating anything sugary. Their closeness and love for each other were really clear. but there was something that bothered me. As they were leaving our house, Daniel and Emily were talking about bringing rice and gifts. While they were busy with that, Daniel came up to me a bit separately and asked suddenly, "Hey, do you maybe not remember me?" His question caught me off guard, and I couldn't help but tilt my head in confusion. "Do you really not remember me?" he asked again, sounding doubtful. His face was handsome, but I couldn't recall any close friend named Daniel. I tried hard to remember, but I couldn't. Seeing me struggling to remember, Daniel sighed a little, looking disappointed. "Well then, let's exchange contact info, and please tell Michael later I forgot to exchange contacts with him." I was shocked by his sudden informal tone. Even if we were close in the past, I couldn't remember it, and I couldn't recall being close with someone who would speak so rudely. Inside I was full of questions like, who is he? What kind of relationship did we have? But since Emily was there, I didn't think it was the right time to ask or say anything, so I stayed quiet. After we exchanged contact info, I decided to text him to clear up my doubts, but before I could, he messaged me first, saying, "I'm surprised the girl who used to sit quietly in the corner of the classroom in elementary school is married before me. Your face hasn't changed much since then, so I recognized you right away." Growing up, I lived far away, and in elementary school, I was teased by many classmates. Those memories are painful, so I moved away with my family from middle school. In the new city, I met Michael, a wonderful friend, and we became close. I'd rather not think about elementary school. His words surprised me, so I asked, "What do you mean?" I didn't want anyone to misunderstand, so I explained that Michael was involved in our messages. We agreed that Michael would be included whenever Daniel and I needed to exchange info. I didn't share my background or reasons with Daniel. After explaining, Daniel smiled warmly and asked, "Do you remember being called PE girl in elementary school?" The term PE girl had a specific meaning. It was used to tease me by my classmates because I was from a single-parent family. Even though we weren't really struggling financially, there was a time when other moms assumed we were just because my mom was a single parent. This rumor might have spread among the kids and led to the teasing. Because of this, and because my mom was considering taking legal action against the moms spreading rumors, I decided to move to a new place. Since then, I haven't heard that unpleasant nickname, which used to cause me so much trouble. But one day I was surprised when a man admitted he didn't even know what the word poor meant. I calmly told him, "Please watch what you say. You're my sister-in-law's fiancé, and that's all. Please don't say things that don't make sense." After that, he didn't message me anymore. Maybe he took my words seriously and realized he shouldn't be rude. But watching all this, Michael seemed really uncomfortable with the way the man spoke, and his face changed quickly. What is that guy even thinking? It's like he doesn't realize he's talking to the sister-in-law of the woman he's going to marry and bringing up stuff from elementary school and acting like nothing's changed. That's just crazy, Michael said, his anger showing. Seeing Michael so upset, I tried to calm him down, saying, take it easy. But I was also worried, so I called my mom right away and asked her to find a class photo from my elementary school days. I wanted to see if there was a classmate named Daniel in it. Mom quickly found a boy named Daniel and said on the phone, "Wasn't this Daniel the one who used to bully you the most?" Suddenly, I remembered everything I had forgotten. Daniel was indeed the main bully. Just to be sure, I asked Mom to send me the photo. Looking at it, he looked quite different now, bigger and chubby. That's probably why I didn't recognize him. After that, I decided to look into things further. A few months after our first meeting, I got a call from Emily, which was surprising after such a long time. "Rebecca, we haven't got your RSVP for the wedding invitation yet. Are you and your husband planning to come?" "What wedding invitation? We were really looking forward to it, but we never got it," I told her. Emily seemed surprised and said, "I definitely sent it. Maybe something went wrong. Anyway, I'll bring it to you tomorrow," she said, sounding very sincere. The next day, Michael and I got the invitation directly from Emily, and we told her we'd be there. At that point, we had no idea what would happen at the wedding or how it would affect us. No one could have guessed what was coming next. On the day of the wedding, Emily looked stunning in her pure white dress, like an angel. I congratulated her with tears in my eyes, hoping for her happiness and ours too. But Daniel, the groom, quickly spoiled the mood. He pointed at me, surprising all of us. "Why are you here? I didn't invite you," he said, looking very displeased. It seemed like Daniel went out of his way to make sure Michael and I didn't get an invitation. This woman grew up with just her mom. When things got tough, she ran away. Maybe she had some money problems, and now she's with a rich guy thinking life will be easy. She's living in a dream, he said. Despite not knowing anything about my past, Daniel falsely accused me. Michael, sitting next to me, clenched his fist in anger, but I told him to calm down. Daniel kept making false accusations against me. "I have an important job at a well-known company. Are you planning to use your connection as my sister-in-law to get money from me if I marry Emily?" he asked firmly. His friends were shocked and started getting excited. They must have the same narrow view as Daniel. I went to a staff member and asked for the microphone. Daniel looked like he expected me to say something emotional and illogical, but I stayed calm and said, "It's ridiculous that you, who can't even remember the face of your own company's president, call yourself an elite? Think carefully. If you want to cut ties with me, I'll be in the president's office tomorrow. We'll go through HR procedures." After handing back the microphone, I confidently returned to my seat with a calm demeanor. Michael stood up and walked towards the exit. Soon after, Emily followed him. Seeing this, Daniel called out to her, "Wait, why are you leaving too? I'm just trying to end things with her. If that's the case, there shouldn't be any problems, right?" Not fully grasping the situation, Daniel spoke to Emily, who gave him a cold look. "You really don't know Rebecca, do you? She's the CEO of Tea Company. I respect and deeply admire her. I can't forgive you for insulting her. I'm ending this engagement right now. You've ruined such an important day. Be prepared." Shocked by Emily's firm words, Daniel was taken aback. Emily talked to the venue staff and removed her wedding dress. She told the guests that the banquet was over and the wedding would now be a simple meal gathering. She made it clear that this wouldn't happen again and firmly blamed Daniel for the breakup. The next day, as I had promised, I calmly waited for him in the president's office. Two big, muscular employees stood beside me, ready to act if he tried anything during our talk. When he came in, he seemed confident at first, but that soon changed. He sat down and looked tense. His behavior, coming in without permission and not even greeting, was rude. It was clear he didn't understand the basic rules of the company. "No way. I can't believe you're really the president. This is unbelievable," he said. "If you did a little research, you'd find the president's info on our website. Didn't you check before coming?" I asked. "Well, there were some things." He trailed off. It seemed he hadn't taken my words seriously or bothered to find out the truth. Maybe he thought I was joking or lying in front of all those guests. I told him, "I'm considering terminating your contract." "What? You can't make such a quick decision over a small misunderstanding." "I'll talk to the Labor Standards Inspection Office," he tried to persuade me. Carefully, but I calmly put a copy of his resume in front of him. "You lied about your education here, didn't you? And you claim to have skills you don't actually have, like Excel and video editing. Is that true?" "Well, about that," he started. Falsifying information and providing false reports are valid reasons for us to terminate an employment contract. I told him directly. He looked surprised at my statement. In fact, I had a strange feeling about him since our first meeting. Afterward, I checked everything thoroughly. Normally, our company doesn't use headhunting methods. Even if we do, I personally meet and interview recommended candidates. But I don't remember having a deep conversation with Daniel. He joined through our regular hiring process and started as a regular employee. He claimed to be aiming for promotion and said he was skilled with certain software, but he actually wasn't. That's why he never got promoted. His self-assessment was very high, and I found that suspicious, so I looked into his attitude. He was lazy at work and seemed content just to be part of the company. I tried to help him improve, but he didn't change. Now that he's broken off his engagement with Emily, there's nothing special between us. He continues to act unpleasantly, making me uncomfortable, so I see no reason to be lenient with him. I promptly asked Daniel to leave the company. Since he had only been with us for less than 6 months, there was no need to consider severance pay or handing over specific duties over such a short time. "Can't you help me out as an old friend?" he pleaded. But I coldly replied, "I don't see any reason to continue our relationship," and arranged for other staff to handle his immediate departure. It seems he was hoping for financial help from his father, but because of the outrageous rumors he spread, that didn't happen. There's a past incident where my mother sued for defamation and Daniel's mother was the victim. My father paid compensation for damages once before. Faced with a similar situation with his son demanding compensation, my father likely reached his limit, stopped providing financial support, and cut ties with him completely. Afterward, Daniel took care of his elderly mother while being pursued for compensation. Eventually, he vanished, seemingly taken away by people in all black clothing, and nobody knows where he is now. Someone might eventually come forward with information about his whereabouts, but I have no plans to actively search for him. Initially, Emily was deeply hurt when she learned about her fiancé's background, but time heals and about 6 months have passed. She's starting to see it positively, saying, "It's probably best we didn't get married." Lately, her smile has returned and she's even looking for a new partner. Seeing her happier again, Michael and I are truly relieved. They're even talking about having children now.
I, Evelyn Turner, at 45, found myself standing at the edge of a precipice I never imagined. Richard, my husband of 15 years, stood before me, his eyes a mirror of disdain and frustration that had been brewing over the years. "You're nothing but a leech, Evelyn. If you're so unhappy, why don't you just leave?" His words, laced with venom, cut through the tense silence of our living room. I looked at him. This man I had shared over a decade of my life with, and felt a strange sense of detachment. The beer can he flung at me, still dripping down my face, was a cold testament to how far we had fallen. The sticky liquid on my skin was nothing compared to the sting of his words. "Fine, I will," I retorted, the weight of my decision settling in my heart. I wasn't going to be a punching bag for his frustrations any longer. I thought back to the early days, the love that had once seemed unbreakable. We were both career-driven when we first met. I was a promising marketing professional, and he worked at the local government office. Marriage came with dreams of a happy family, a dream that slowly turned into a haunting mirage. The pressure to have a child became a silent wedge between us. I still remember the day I decided to leave my job 5 years into our marriage. The unspoken expectations from Richard's family, the pitying looks, the whispered questions. They were all too much. I thought stepping back from my career to focus on fertility treatments would ease the tension. How wrong I was. As years rolled by without the pitter-patter of little feet we so desperately longed for, Richard's patience wore thin. His once supportive demeanor turned to bitterness. Each failed attempt a blow to his ego, his manhood. "Your body's just not up to it, huh?" His words from a particularly harsh argument echoed in my mind. I had borne them all, the treatments, the side effects, the crushing disappointments, and yet here I was being called a parasite. With a deep breath, I stepped over the threshold of our home, the door closing with a finality that echoed my resolve. The night air felt different now, almost liberating. The suburban street, usually quiet and unassuming, felt like the runway of a new beginning. I didn't know where this path would lead me, but one thing was clear. I was no longer the woman who would shrink under the weight of Richard's disdain. The journey ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, it was mine to make. The train to my parents' house offered a fleeting escape, each passing landscape blurring into a montage of my thoughts. My parents, Robert and Diane, were a beacon of comfort in the tempest of my life. As I stepped into the familiar warmth of my childhood home, their concerned expressions were a silent testament to my unannounced arrival. "Mom, Dad, My voice faltered, the weight of my confession anchoring me to the spot. "What happened, Evelyn? You look like you've been through a storm." My mother's voice was laced with worry as she reached out, her touch a reminder of simpler times. I let out a deep sigh, the dam of my emotions breaking. "Richard and we had a fight. I couldn't stay there anymore," I confessed, the words tasting bitter. The look of shock on my parents' faces quickly turned to anger. "That man has always been a thorn," my father muttered, his disappointment in Richard never a secret. I recounted the events of the night, the years of accumulated pain spilling over. My parents listened, their expressions a mix of anger and heartbreak. They had never truly approved of Richard, but their love for me had silenced their objections. "He called me a parasite, Mom." I choked on the words, the hurt resurfacing. "A parasite? After everything you've sacrificed?" My mother's voice rose in disbelief. "You gave up your career, endured those treatments?" Her words were a painful reminder of the life I had left behind. I had been a rising star in the marketing world, full of ambition and ideas, but the desire to start a family, fueled by societal expectations and familial pressures, had led me down a different path. Richard's support had been my solace during those trying times. But as each treatment failed, his patience waned, replaced by a bitterness that poisoned our marriage. The man who once held my hand through every doctor's visit had transformed into a stranger, his frustrations often unloaded onto me. My father's voice pulled me back from my reverie. "You don't deserve this, Evelyn. You've been more than patient with that man." Their words, though comforting, were a stark reminder of the reality I now faced. I was no longer part of a we. It was just me, standing at the crossroads of my life. As I lay in my old bedroom that night, the moonlight streaming through the window, I made a silent vow. Richard would see the woman he had underestimated. This was not just about leaving a failed marriage. It was about reclaiming the parts of me that I had lost along the way. The dawn of the next day was more than just a new morning. It marked the beginning of my journey towards self-reclamation and retribution. The days following my return to my parents' home were a blend of healing and introspection. Amidst the nurturing care of my family, I found myself reflecting on the years lost to a marriage that had become a shadow of its promise. It was time to step out of that shadow. I set up a small workspace in the corner of my old room, my laptop, an old friend welcoming me back. The world of marketing, once my arena of triumph, beckoned me again. I started reaching out to contacts, piecing together a freelance consulting business. It felt like awakening from a long slumber. "Remember, Evelyn, you were always meant for more than what that man allowed you to be," my father said one morning, his words a bolstering force. I found solace in the rhythm of work, the challenges a welcome distraction. My expertise, once set aside to fulfill the role of a hopeful mother and neglected wife, now became my weapon of independence. Then, one evening, as I sat immersed in a project, my phone buzzed. It was Richard. My heart skipped a beat, a mix of apprehension and anger bubbling within. "Evelyn, we need to talk. You can't just leave things like this." His voice was a mix of frustration and feigned concern. "Talk? Now you want to talk, Richard?" I countered, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "You're overreacting. Come back and we'll sort this out. You belong here with me," he said, a tinge of command in his tone. I scoffed, the audacity of his words igniting a fire within me. "Belong with you? As what, Richard? Your punching bag, your scapegoat for everything that's gone wrong?" There was a pause, and I could almost hear the cogs turning in his mind, searching for a retort. "Evelyn, you're being unreasonable. This is your home," he finally said, his voice laced with a false calm. "Unreasonable? No, Richard. For years I've been the reasonable one, accommodating your moods, your failures, your bitterness. I've lost myself in the process, and I'm not willing to lose any more." The conversation ended with a deafening silence on his end. I hung up, a sense of liberation coursing through me. It was the first time I had spoken back, the first time I had refused to be overshadowed by his ego. As days turned into weeks, my consulting business began to flourish. The satisfaction of rebuilding my career was accompanied by a newfound confidence. I was no longer the woman Richard thought he could control. I was Evelyn Turner, a professional, a survivor, and now a fighter. This new path was not just about financial independence. It was about reclaiming my identity, my dignity. Richard's attempts to belittle my efforts only fueled my determination. The stage was set for a confrontation, and this time I was ready. The newfound strength I had discovered in myself was put to the test sooner than I expected. Richard, ever the manipulator, had grown increasingly desperate in his attempts to regain control. But I was no longer the woman who cowered under his shadow. One fateful evening, as I was finalizing a project, a knock at the door shattered the tranquility of my parents' home. There stood Richard, his face a mask of false contrition. "Evelyn, we need to talk. I've made some mistakes, but we can work through this," he pleaded, stepping into the house uninvited. My father, standing behind me, bristled with anger. "You have some nerve showing up here after what you've done," he growled. Ignoring my father, Richard's gaze fixed on me. "Evelyn, don't let your family cloud your judgment. We're married. That means something." I felt a surge of defiance. "Married? That bond shattered the moment you threw that beer can at me, Richard. What do you want?" He hesitated, and then, as if throwing caution to the wind, revealed the true reason for his visit. "I'm in trouble, Evelyn. The gambling. It's gotten out of hand. I owe a lot of money." The revelation hit me like a wave. His gambling was not just a vice. It was an addiction that had now spiraled into a crisis. "And you think I should bail you out?" I asked, incredulity lacing my words. Richard's face contorted into a sneer. "Who else do I have, Evelyn? You owe me. I supported you through all those treatments, remember?" The audacity of his words was like a slap in the face. "You think I owe you? For what? For years of neglect? For emotional abuse? For calling me a parasite?" The room was thick with tension, my parents standing in silent support behind me. Richard, realizing his usual tactics were failing, shifted his approach. "Evelyn, think about it. If I go down, you go down with me. Your precious new life will be ruined," he threatened, a desperate edge to his voice. But I was done being intimidated. "No, Richard, you made your bed and now you have to lie in it. I am not responsible for your debts, your failures, or your life." Defeated and enraged, Richard stormed out, slamming the door behind him. The finality of that moment was not lost on me. I had stood up to him, unyielding and resolute. The next morning, I met with a lawyer to discuss the divorce proceedings. Richard's gambling debts were his alone, and I was determined to ensure they stayed that way. As I walked out of the lawyer's office, a sense of empowerment enveloped me. I had faced my fears, confronted my tormentor, and emerged stronger. The path ahead was not going to be easy, but I was ready for whatever challenges it brought. The days following my encounter with Richard were a whirlwind of legal meetings and emotional preparation. My lawyer, a competent and empathetic woman, guided me through the divorce proceedings with a reassuring professionalism. Yet, amidst the legalities, there was a storm of emotions brewing within me, a mix of liberation and lingering hurt. Meanwhile, Richard's situation worsened. His gambling debts had caught up with him, and his desperate attempts to find financial relief only plunged him deeper into the mire. I heard through the grapevine that his job was on the line and his reputation was in tatters. This was the karma he had earned, yet I found no joy in his downfall. "Mom, do you think I'm doing the right thing?" I asked one evening, seeking validation amidst the chaos. My mother, ever the pillar of strength, took my hand. "Evelyn, you're reclaiming your life. That's the bravest thing you can do." Her words were a balm to my troubled soul. I had spent years under Richard's shadow, and now I was stepping into the light, albeit a tumultuous one. The day I signed the divorce papers was bittersweet. On one hand, I was freeing myself from a toxic marriage. On the other, it was the end of a chapter I had once hoped would be my forever. As the reality of my new life settled in, I found solace in my work. My consulting business was not just a means of livelihood. It was a testament to my resilience and capability. Clients appreciated my expertise, and the satisfaction of successful projects was a reminder of what I had lost and found again, my professional identity. Richard, however, seemed to spiral further out of control. He tried to reach out several times, sometimes pleading, other times accusing. But I stood firm, supported by the unwavering love of my family and the newfound strength within me. One afternoon, as I was reviewing a project proposal, a call from an unknown number caught me off guard. Hesitantly, I answered, "Evelyn, you need to help me. They're going to take everything." Richard's voice, panicked and broken, echoed through the phone. "Richard, I can't help you. You've made your choices," I replied, my voice steady despite the turmoil his words stirred. "You don't understand, Evelyn. I'm ruined. I've lost my job, my reputation. You can't just abandon me like this," he pleaded. "Abandon you? Richard, you abandoned me long ago, in every way that mattered. I'm sorry, but you have to face the consequences of your actions." Hanging up the phone, I felt a sense of finality wash over me. Richard's fate was no longer my burden to bear. My journey ahead was mine alone, paved with the lessons of the past and the promise of a future I would shape on my own terms. The final chapter of my marriage to Richard closed with a mix of relief and introspection. My newfound independence was both exhilarating and daunting. I had weathered the storm of a crumbling marriage, and now, standing amidst the ruins, I was ready to rebuild. My consulting business was thriving, a symbol of my resilience and capability. The freedom to make my own decisions, to steer my life on my own terms, was a heady feeling. Yet, amid this newfound success, Richard's shadow occasionally loomed. News of his complete downfall trickled down to me through mutual acquaintances. He had lost his job due to his gambling scandal, his reputation irreparably tarnished. The once respected public servant was now a pariah, shunned by those he had once considered allies. One evening, as I was preparing for a client meeting, my phone buzzed with an incoming call from Richard. With a deep breath, I answered, ready for whatever accusations or pleas he had this time. "Evelyn, please, I'm begging you. I have nothing left. Can't you see it in your heart to help me?" Richard's voice was a mix of desperation and self-pity. "Richard, I helped you for years. I supported you, even when you gave me nothing but pain in return. I can't be your savior anymore," I replied, my voice firm. "You're enjoying this, aren't you? Seeing me suffer. You've always been so cold, so heartless," he accused, his words laced with bitterness. I felt a twinge of anger at his accusation. "Heartless? After everything I endured with you? No, Richard, I'm not heartless. I'm just no longer willing to be a victim to your choices." There was silence on the other end, and then a soft, defeated sigh. "I never thought it would come to this," he murmured, more to himself than to me. The call ended, leaving me with a mix of emotions: pity, relief, and a sense of finality. Richard's downfall was of his own making, his karma for the years of neglect and emotional abuse. As I moved forward with my life, I focused on my work and my family, the pillars of my strength. I even began planning a community project, a way to give back and connect with others. My past with Richard was a chapter closed, a lesson learned. The journey was not without its scars, but it was also filled with growth and self-discovery. I had emerged from the shadows of betrayal, stronger and more determined. My story was one of empowerment, of a woman who reclaimed her life from the clutches of a toxic marriage, and in doing so, found her true self. And so, as I sat at my desk looking out at the world that was once a daunting expanse, I realized it was now a canvas of possibilities. I had survived the storm, and now it was my time to thrive,